sports and TV show streams, going live on YouTube, streaming live on YouTube. These are Rescue 911 episodes. Todd falls in grain bin, ambulance accident. These are full episodes from Get TV.
This program contains true stories of rescues. All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Unless indicated, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened. For dispatchers and emergency centers across the country, each call brings the voice of a person in trouble, and each response may save a life. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, true stories of miraculous recoveries and tragic loss on Rescue 911. We begin on a dairy farm in western Pennsylvania, where Pat Strausser and her family have lived for the past 2 years. Around 4:30 p.m., Pat had gone down to the barn to feed the cows before milking. While she worked, her 3 children played on the level above, including her 2-year-old son, Danny. An actor portrays Danny, but the rest of the people involved have returned to help us tell his story.
The cart that we put the grain into was getting empty, so I pushed it under what we call the feed hole to let the feed drop down into it. Danny came over to what we call the hay hole, and he told me he couldn't get his shoe on.
Christy, can you help him get his shoe back on?
He saw me using a stick to poke the feed to get it to come down the hole because it was clogged. And I think he thought, well, now's my big chance to help Mommy. Whenever I got to the feed bin, all I saw was feed. It was just total panic. The more I dug, the more feed kept falling on top of me, and I couldn't find him.
I heard the kids, and I could just see the girls there yelling and screaming, and I just took off running.
I finally found Danny's hand, and I jerked him out. And I held him up and looked at him. And I just felt that he was already dead.
When we continue.
Neither one of us knew how to do it for sure, but we knew we had to do something, and he was near dead and was alive.
This Saturday on Get TV.
Someone's saying that.
Take you through everything, step by step.
Hint, no sugar, no sweeteners, no calories.
A month is all it takes to give an animal whose weight
I had checked really quick for the pulse of his heart. It was still beating. His mouth was totally plugged and full of feed. It was just packed, and I cleaned all that out with my hands and then tried to push air into his lungs.
Pat ran to the house to call for an ambulance.
Neither one of us knew how to do it for sure, but you know, we knew we had to do something, and he was near dead and he was alive.
Emergency dispatch, can I help you?
The call for help came into the IGCO dispatch center at 5:06 p.m. A local volunteer fire department was immediately alerted.
Control Station 32, all fire report to the fire hall. We have a medical emergency, 1805 Park Avenue, medical emergency.
Station 32 is in service control.
I had a rough time to get any air to down. I was afraid of hurting him by trying to force it too hard.
Paramedics were also called in from the nearest township.
74 guard control.
When the first emergency workers arrived on the scene, Rob and Don were still trying to revive the boy. Assistant Fire Chief Bruce Gray took over the resuscitation efforts.
We were very concerned when we first got there because the boy didn't appear to be breathing. We could not distinguish any breath on his own, so we proceeded to go ahead and put the mask on him and give him air. But he couldn't take a very deep breath because he was so full of grain. His lungs were packed. The amount of grain that he had ingested was having an effect on him because it was swelling up inside. And after grain hits the water and the moisture in the water, it tends to swell up. And at that time, we were unsure whether we were going to be able to bring him around and get him to breathe on his own because he was so full of grain.
I don't think I can really even describe how I felt at that point, knowing that I might lose my baby. It just seemed impossible that it was him lying there, motionless, and I just felt so helpless seeing him that way.
Ten minutes later, the ambulance arrived with paramedic Brad Malone and his partner.
His color was bad, so we knew, he had a short amount of time to work with since he wasn't losing enough oxygen to live on.
They had to suction the feed out of his airways, or he would suffocate.
When it's a little 2-year-old, he hasn't that much time to live, and to kind of come across something with this change to go,
The boy was sent down to a drinking shower. They could do nothing more for him in the field, but continued to try to force air into his body. The decision was made to transport him to the hospital.
I felt it was my fault. I blamed myself. I just felt defenseless. I could not do anything to help him. It was out of my hands. It was a total roller coaster ride, up and down every couple hours, because we get good news, and then the next time somebody talked to us, it was a setback. Something was going wrong.
Danny needed to have the grain removed from his body immediately. He was transported by helicopter to the children's wing of Mercy Hospital in Pittsburgh, where Dr. Anthony Ulizio took charge.
The child had aspirated massive amounts of grain particles. It appeared that it would be just a matter of time where his body would collapse, and death was a very real possibility.
One of the doctors that was going to do the surgery said that Daniel wouldn't make it without the surgery. And then he says, and then he might not make it with the surgery. And that was, kind of hard to take.
They began working on the boy by 10 p.m. The dry feed was swelling inside his body. They had to remove it grain by grain before it completely blocked the airways of his lungs.
The procedure involved passing the telescope into the child's windpipe. We worked through the inside of the telescope with very small equipment, forceps, which were used to grasp the multiple particles we encountered and remove them. The particles had migrated into the smallest openings of the lungs that we could possibly see with the limits of our equipment.
After 2 hours, the procedure was completed successfully.
When I knew he was going to make it, it was like he was being born again, you know, having your first baby or something. That's what I felt like. I was just so happy.
Danny is 3 years old now. He was released from the hospital after 9 days and has suffered no ill effects.
It was just lucky that Dan's foot came down through that hole. It could have gotten stuck, and I'd never even known he was in there.
I'm very, very, very happy that he came back home. And because I missed him, and because he always plays with us too. When he first came home, he said, I love you.
I feel very lucky that my son's still here. I'm not his natural father, but for some reason, to him I am his dad. I did what any dad would have done if that was their son behavior. There's quite a few people that died for his life, and there's quite a few heroes out there.
Next.
1 minute they're there, next minute they're not. I didn't really know what to think.
I don't hear nothing, James.
Attention citizens, Bunny's in danger. Join us in the fight against grouches. Bunny wants you for First Families of Bunny, weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern.
All across America, a line is being drawn.
The sooner you get the benefits you deserve.
Call now. 8.
ESO code.
9 was not just an average day.
Around 3 in the afternoon, a call for help came into dispatcher Pam Bowman.
ESO code. Tell us about it. Bonnie Gibbon Road to get it to that. Bonnie Gibbon Road.
It was at least a 2-car accident when it was called in. At this time, we didn't know that it would be more than that.
2-car accident, at least a 2-car accident, Bonnie Gilbert Road, with injuries.
Neil, you want to go on this one? Yeah.
Most of the time, if we have another truck available, we take and back up that one, just in case there's more patients to be transported. It was pouring down rain, which it had been all day, and the roads were real slick. We had a lot of accidents that day.
2 ambulances headed to the scene with number 23 bringing up the rear. Cardiac technician Tom Kane was on the radio, and EMT Neil Stevens was driving. The 2 ambulances kept in close contact because of the weather. The lead ambulance was driven by paramedic Steve Parker.
It was a dangerous condition, and at one point we did have a problem. We went through a dip in the road, hit a large waterfall. It did slide a little bit, and we notified the other truck to be careful.
Y'all watch out for that water back there.
As they rounded a curve, the lead ambulance lost sight of number 23.
1 minute they're there, next minute they're not. I didn't really know what to think.
Tom and I were scheduled to get married, and the first thing I thought of was that they had seen an accident that maybe Steve had not seen, and they had stopped to render aid, and maybe they were out of the truck, which was why I tried on the big radio, because they would have a portable with them. And when they didn't answer on that, I don't know what went through except that something was wrong.
The fire hydrant had ripped a hole in the ambulance's gas tank.
Just not knowing and being real scared and not wanting to think about the worst. But if you've ever worked this profession, then you've seen the worst and you know what vehicles can do. You know what the rain does, you know what the roads do.
You have a situation called patient abandonment, that when you receive a call and you do not respond for some reason, you can be held liable. So we continued on the call.
You might want to send a unit over to the city of Buckeye University.
I was nervous and upset. Steve came up on the radio and told me that maybe I needed to send the fire department over there to see what had happened to them. That maybe they had stopped for an accident or something was wrong.
A Georgia Power Company troubleshooter on his way to work had seen the accident happen.
And as I ran over there, there was an opening in the windshield. That's nothing but the fingers in there. He was a hefty guy, but just seemed like something just took over, just took control.
The man finally managed to pull Tom out of the wreck, though Tom was twice his weight.
I said to myself, there's no way I'm going back in there. And by that time, I was back in there.
The man then got Neil's jam seat belt undone somehow and pulled him to safety as well.
As if he had just even hesitated for a second, we'd have been dead. We've been to people that have doused themselves in gas and burned and lived for a few hours afterwards. And that's one of the most painful ways to die I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of people die.
I thought, how did I survive that? That's just remarkable. He's just an average built person. Obviously not real strong, not strong enough to miraculously pull a 350-pound Tom out of the ambulance. The only thing that I could explain how it happened would be the adrenaline that happens in a situation that way. Our bodies sometimes can be pushed further than we think.
I never had that feeling before. It's just like a force, like energy. And I know if it wasn't for that feeling, that instinct, it wouldn't happen.
If we hadn't gotten out in the next 10, 15 seconds, we'd be dead right now. We'd be 6 foot under. We owe our life to that man.
Tom called in, and it was a real short conversation. I wanted to know, I wanted to see for myself, and I knew I couldn't. And the fact that we couldn't do anything about it, that we had to still keep working as if nothing was wrong, all again, I still had to get Steve and Tim still had to go on their call. It wasn't that we didn't care or that we weren't real upset. It's just that's just what we do.
Concerned that he would be late to work, the man simply got into his pickup and drove off without telling anyone his name.
A few minutes later, I was asking people where he was, and somebody said, oh, he left. He's gone. And I turned around and said, but you don't understand. I got to go thank this man. He just saved my life.
A good Samaritan rescued 2 people from burning ambulance.
By the next day, everyone in Macon was trying to find out who the mysterious hero was.
Fire trapping 2 medical technicians inside.
Dopey Thomas heard the news and knew they were looking for his co-worker, Norris Thomas.
The man then vanished from the accident scene before anybody could get his name. Authorities are hoping this good Samaritan will come forward and identify himself.
Norris is sort of a reserved type person, you know. Certainly I wouldn't, go in his privacy without talking to him.
But Dopey wanted Norris to get the credit he deserved.
It was just something that I did, and I just leave. I don't wait for them to come out and thank me for doing something like that. I just went on left.
Good morning.
Once he had permission, Doty gave Norris's name to the people at Mid-Georgia Ambulance.
I heard on the radio coming to work, you're trying to find the guy that pulled your people out of your ambulance.
I kind of got excited because I noticed, word's kind of getting out what a good thing my buddy's done,
And I went up and shook his hand and told him on behalf of my family, my parents and my wife, that I thank him for pulling me out. He told me, he said, let's just play this down. And I said, Norris, what you did was out of the ordinary. I said, you saved my life.
He said, Norris, you did a great thing. My job is to go out and save people's lives every chance I get. And he said, that's what you did. That's what you did for me. And, I was stunned for a little while after he said that, and I never did realize that. I never did think about it that way.
2.5 months later, Ann and Tom were married.
To be pulled out by a bystander instead of us pulling the bystander out, it's kind of a swap on the tables. And it's nice to know that somebody out there is willing to risk their lives for us.
Okay, now I'm going to... I'll delete this episode. Feed Bin Boy, Rescuers Rescue. Now I'm gonna go to Cobra Chaos, Choking Granny. Pet Cobra bites man, elderly woman chokes.
This program contains true stories of rescues. All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Whenever possible, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened. We begin in Miami, Florida, where Grant Kemmer was outside on the patio of his apartment, tending to his favorite pets.
Grant's always loved animals. He didn't care what they were.
He wanted to have snakes. We allowed him to have snakes at the house, which were non-poisonous snakes. After he had his own place, he told me that he was going to get some semi-poisonous snakes. And I knew that once we had progressed to a semi-poisonous snake, that the next thing was going to be a poisonous snake.
And I told him whenever he got the snakes, I said, you know, one of these days they're going to call me at work and they're going to tell me you've been bitten. And Grant's pat answer to that was, no, Mom, don't worry. Trust me, it will never happen.
Ignoring his parents' warnings, Grant bought a rare albino Asian cobra, one of the most deadly animals in the world.
When Grant showed me the cobra, I was fascinated by it. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's also absolutely lethal. Grant said that the snake was docile, but to me the snake was very hostile. Anytime I was ever around the snake would hood, and the snake would strike the front of the cage, and it would continue to strike the front of the cage until its nose was bloody.
Shortly before midnight on November 20th, 1989, Grant went to change the cobra's water. After 4 years, he was confident he could handle the snake safely. Larry Wygand had only been Grant's roommate for a month.
When he pulled out his albino snake, I noticed that it was getting close to him, but I didn't worry because I knew that he's handled it before.
Carefully keeping the snake's head away from his body, down near his thick leather boots, Grant reached for the snake's empty water bowl.
I heard him shout from the patio, and when I looked out, he was putting the albino snake back into the cage. Grant was shocked. He started to react, I think, maybe feel a little nauseous. So then he said, Larry, just get me to the hospital, let's go.
Without treatment, the cobra's venom could kill Grant within a few hours.
When Grant started to tell me that his reaction might be a cardiac arrest, that's when I really started to worry.
When we continue.
Cobra. This particular antivenom for an Asian cobra isn't kept available in the hospital because it's used so rarely.
Wake up every morning to Funny Side Up.
I tell you, Michael, when it comes to jive, JJ is the best alive. And I tell you, JJ, when it comes to food, you're at the head of the school. When I was born, my body was blessed by Mother Nature, huh? And as you got older, it was...
Audio much more often this summer. Plus, and talk about options. Choose from manual model more often.
And do it all at $200 off if you...
Cobra. I saw the victim slumped over and the blood running down his leg, and I figured the time was of essence.
Florida Highway Patrol Officer Jim Carr headed for the nearest hospital.
I then notified the station that I had a snakebite victim and that he'd been bit by a cobra, and that they needed to tell the hospital, Baptist ER, that I had somebody coming in so they could prepare for him. I reached speeds right in the area of 100, 110 miles an hour. It allowed me to get to Baptist in right around the area of 3 minutes. I know that you get bit by a cobra, you don't have a whole lot of time to deal with it. He was still conscious at the time, but as I was carrying him in, he said that he was getting a little lightheaded.
Got a snake bite.
Okay, I'll get that around. What kind of snake was it?
It's Cobra.
We'll see if we have the antivenom.
Let's get the leaves on him.
He told us kind of snake that he was bitten by, and we realized that we had a problem. This particular antivenom for an Asian cobra isn't kept available in the hospital because it's used so rarely.
Emergency room doctor Larry Brennan had never treated a cobra bite before.
I was changing the water bowl in his cage.
When did it happen?
About 20 minutes ago.
The fact that he was so sick so soon after being bitten meant to me that he had had a rather severe bite. And this really caused a lot of concern because this particular type of snake has a neurotoxin basically that can paralyze a person. He could stop breathing, his heart could stop, and I knew right at the particular time there was not a lot we could do for him.
That may have this antivenom.
The nursing staff and people at the desk began to make phone calls to try and obtain some type of antivenom that we could use, and no one actually could agree on the type of antivenom that we needed.
You recognize your mother?
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things going through my head. How did we get into this age and then all of a sudden this happens to him?
Grant asked him to contact his friend, snake expert Joe Wasilewski. Joe brought some anti-venom he thought would work to the hospital.
Poor Grant must have been scared half to death just by the vibrations of everyone coming on around him. Hey, Grant, come here. So I went in there as calm as I can be, and I just wanted to give him some confidence, and Grant seemed relieved. I've been through all that you're talking about. To see one of your friends in such a condition is scary. Okay, I'm gonna go talk to the doctor.
The antivenom that he brought in was a South African cobra antivenom. The snake that had bitten Grant was an Asian cobra. If you use the wrong type of antivenom and you then wanted to re-inject him with a different type of antivenom, he may be sensitive to that and may have a full-blown allergic reaction.
No work for that cobra.
I know that the snake he has is an Asian cobra.
With only one chance to save Grant's life with antivenom, Dr. Branham was reluctant to use the wrong kind.
I don't know. Can you go see if you can get the
No problem.
I didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about him, so I really didn't know how reputable his information might be.
The trip to get the book kind of bothered me because I knew it would take an hour under normal circumstances. And from what I saw, his symptoms were going downhill fast.
He was having trouble with his breathing, he was having trouble with his speech, having trouble with seeing even. Once these types of symptoms begin, the neurotoxin can progress very rapidly, leading to anything from coma to death.
It had been less than 2 hours since Grant was bitten.
I was hoping for the best and expecting the worst. I was praying to God that he would pull Grant through, that he would give him a second chance, that he wouldn't take my only son away from me.
Let's get another BP on.
Around 2 a.m., Joe returned with the snake book.
When I showed the book to the doctor, it does say additional venoms neutralized, and it said Asian cobra, but there was an asterisk, and I never noticed the asterisk before, but the doctor sure did, and it actually said it may or may not neutralize this venom, and if it does, it may be slight. So the doctor still wasn't convinced that this was the proper serum.
When you come right down to it, we really didn't have a choice. We had to try something. We had to do something. And Grant kept telling me, Joe knows what he's doing. So I had talked to his father, and his father went out and he went ahead and signed the papers, and he started giving them the serum.
Nearly 3 hours had passed. Time was running out.
It was frightening to say yes. Use this antivenom that may or may not work.
You gotta stay with me when I'm putting this in you.
And the antivenom didn't seem to take effect. Grant was still declining. His pulse was irregular, his fingernails were turning blue, which I was real concerned with. Come on, talk to me. Talk to me. I think we were into approximately the 5th or 6th vial before you could see things started to reverse themselves.
By the time he had finished the 100 cc's of anti-venom, he was totally awake. He was still having some blurred vision, but his vital signs and things were okay.
The happiest moment of the entire evening was when Grant asked for food. When he said those particular words, "I'm hungry," I thought, we got this, this is made, this is it, this is, this is going to be history.
And I'm sure you'll be glad to get out of here.
It was really a festive time for all, because everybody knew Grant was going to make it. I think we'll all be glad to get out of here. Every animal has a little niche in the world. Now let's say we kill
Joe and I have become very close, of course, through this. We work together now doing shows and lectures. I feel good every time I teach a youngster how important animals are to us.
Grant still collects snakes, but none are poisonous. He knows he can't count on being that lucky twice, and he wouldn't want to risk hurting the people who care about him.
It's just something that not everybody gets to see, is how genuine friends and family's love is for you, and you really can't understand that until you do come that close.
When it's all over, you look at the things that you've done, like you growling for not brushing his teeth or not picking up his clothes, and you think, geez, that was minor, I'm just thankful he's alive. Just very thankful he's alive.
Everybody look up over here. Smile, everybody.
Next.
Listen carefully, I'm going to tell you what to do.
Grandma, are you out?
When his brother returns from years of captivity, they head back to the frontier to free their sister.
We will ride
Talk to a licensed Humana sales agent to see TV.
On January 16, 1990, 79-year-old Luella Patterson was visiting her granddaughter Dina Brown at her home in Vancouver, Washington. It had been months since they had seen one another, and they were looking forward to being able to spend some time together.
My grandma was just really important to me because when I was a child, she played such a big role in my life. She was just so special. She was the person that made me believe in myself. She was probably the one most single important person in my life when I was growing up. I had made a large batch of rolls. She said, sure, so I opened a roll and I gave her half. I had put everything onto the table except for the rolls. I turned around, she was gone from the chair. And I just had an instinct of feeling something was wrong. I walked back in the kitchen and he just said, by the way she looked, I could tell something was the matter with her.
KJ! KJ! Grandma's choking! You need to go get KJ now!
I was in the office on the telephone. I was immediately alarmed that I better get up and go see what's going on. So I just abruptly cut off the conversation and I went back into the kitchen.
Hold on, KJ's coming. Hurry up, KJ! She's choking!
She was completely helpless to help herself to do anything. And when she turned around and looked at me with those great big eyes, and it was just like, help me, KJ. That was the part that was hard.
A call for help came in at 5:44 p.m. EMTs from the nearest fire station were immediately dispatched. A team of paramedics from farther away, trained in advanced life support, were also sent to the scene. The call was then turned over to dispatcher Laird Cummings.
Help is on the way. Is the person conscious?
Not really. What do I do?
Is the person able to talk or cough? Listen carefully. I'm going to tell you what to do.
Grandma, are you on? Oh, God.
She was pretty hysterical. She was yelling and screaming and really not paying too much attention. Started giving her the orders of what to do and how to do it. And it took control of her.
Okay. Stand behind the person.
She's down on the ground.
Okay. What you need to do is just basically like lay behind the person or get down with the person. Okay? Behind them. Wrap your arms around the waist.
Wrap your arms around the waist, KJ. Around the waist.
Make a fist with one hand.
Fist with one hand.
And place it. You just repeat what I'm saying, okay?
Fist with one hand.
Place it against the stomach.
Place it against the stomach.
In the middle, slightly above the navel.
In the middle, slightly above the navel.
Okay. Grasp the fist with your other hand.
Grab the fist with your other hand.
Press into the stomach
Into the stomach.
with quick upward thrust.
Upward thrust.
And repeat that until it's expelled, okay?
She's out. She's out. Nothing's happening.
Okay. Okay, keep trying that. Is the person able to breathe?
She's out. She's out cold.
Okay, listen carefully. I'll tell you what to do next, okay? Get her flat on her back, okay? On the floor. Okay. And you're going to have to calm down just a bit, okay? Try to help.
She started to lose it again. And at that point, I was concerned that there was nobody else there that was going to be able to deliver the procedure. I didn't think that she was going to be able to be confident enough to do it.
Dina sent her daughter Mindy upstairs to get house guest Michael McComb.
Calm down just a bit, okay? Try to help. Strip the chest and straddle the thighs, okay? Strip the chest and straddle the thighs, okay? That means that you would sit across the thighs after you strip the chest. Okay? Have you got that?
When I heard the ambulance coming at that point, I just looked at Michael helplessly, and he knew that I couldn't stand there any longer. And I gave the phone to him.
And he says, okay, what do I do now? And I went through the procedure with him.
Press into the stomach with quick upward thrust. Do this about 10 times and let me know what's going on, okay? Okay. What we're trying to do is expel that object. Has anything come up? Have you checked in her mouth?
We knew we were working against time. We have a 4 to 6 minute window where the brain can be without oxygen, and we were getting real close to that time period.
Is she breathing or moving yet? No. Okay, listen carefully. I'm going to tell you what to do in the next step, okay? Lift the chin so the head bends back. Open the mouth. If you see something in there, turn away from that. Once you get the mouth open, if she's breathing, she is breathing? Yeah. Okay.
The Heimlich maneuver seemed to have loosened the blockage.
I ran outside to wait for them to get here. I was in fear that they'd pass the driveway. I didn't know if she had been out long enough, really, whether any damage had been done to her, or whether they would be able to really bring her back.
Somebody's good. Okay, I want you to keep in line until they get in the house, okay? Should we get out of the way? Oh, definitely. Okay, we're going to hang up there. Okay, sir. Bye.
EMT Chris Orman was on the scene within 3 minutes.
I'm concerned, real concerned, because this is on the edge. I mean, we find that she still has a pulse. Her pupils are still reactive. She was still trying to breathe. She just wasn't moving any air past the blockage. Paramedic unit was only a minute or so behind us. And as long as 2 minutes of my life.
The beeping you hear in the background is my cell phone. I got text.
Blocked airways.
Okay, she needs to get that thing out of there. We need the airway kit in here right now.
Using a laryngoscope, which is a tool that's made specifically for looking into a person's mouth and throat. I was able to see Brad actually blocking the vocal cords.
I see it. There it is. I got it. There it is, Jerry.
Moments after removing the bread, she took a real deep breath.
Her color's picking up. IV's on the way. Let's get her ready to transport.
I went out into the front porch and I just said a little prayer and I just said, God, please give me an opportunity to get back to her what she gave to me as a child.
After 2 days in the hospital, Noella Patterson was back home with her family.
The people from the ambulance, the people from the fire department, and the people from the 911 center and the man on the other line particularly were a part of my family almost at that time. They cared, they were sensitive to the emotion and the hurt that was going on, and also all business about bringing Grandma back around.
And thank God I have more days to be with the family. It's just wonderful to sit down with my grandchildren and be alive.
This has definitely made my grandmother and I closer, and I spend as much time with her as I possibly can. And I value the time because it's so precious. She could be gone right now, you know.
For more full episodes of Rescue 911, hit the big red button and subscribe. Peace out, YouTube.